with firefighters.
Yeah, I don't understand the reluctancy, I never will. So.
I do not either. So it's going to be an interesting labor question
Yeah.
to be determined. There are a lot of cases about flu vaccines from about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. We are ready to begin the meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry to interrupt the conversation, everyone, but it is 10 minutes and I'm going to try and start on time as promised. So Bonnie, we're good to go?
Yes, we are.
Great. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Retirement. It is 9:11 a.m. on Wednesday, November 3rd. Bonnie, would you take roll call and provide the usual announcements?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bernstein. This meeting is being held virtually, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Mr. Pryor?
Here.
Mr. Knox?
Here.
Ms. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Santos?
Present.
Mr. Oakham?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Kehoe?
Present.
Mr. Robbins?
I'm present.
Mr. Harris? Ms. Zapanta? Okay, I see both of them in the meeting platform, Mr. Harris and Ms. Zapanta in the meeting platform. Mr. and Chair Bernstein?
I'm here.
Great. Staff participating in the meeting includes CEO Santos Kryman, Deputy CEO Louis Lugo, Assistant Executive Officers JJ Popowich and Laura Guglielmo, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, Senior Staff Counsel Frank Boyd, consultants and advisors include Jennifer Creighton, Dr. Glenn Arisman, and Fiduciary Counsel Bob Klausner. Managers and staff include Alan Cochran, Carlos Barrios, Kathy Delino, Cassandra Smith, Cynthia Martinez, Ricky Contreras, Tamara Caldwell, Vicki Neely, Carrie Wilson, Ricardo Salinas, and Hernan Barrientos. Trustees, please use the Zoom chat option to be placed in the queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute their mics until you are ready to speak. And now we may proceed with the agenda.
Thank you very much. We are on to item 2, approval of the minutes. Do I have any changes before we move the minutes? Then I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Motion Pryor.
It's Keith, I'll second.
Moved by Pryor, seconded by Knox. Bonnie, roll call, please.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Mr. Oakham?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta? Chair Bernstein?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Thank you very much. We're on to item 3, public comment. I'm not aware of any requests from the public to speak. Bonnie?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. We are on to item 4, other communication. We'll start with September All-Stars. Is that you, JJ?
That is me. Thank you very
Great.
much, Chair Bernstein, and good morning to trustees. This is that time when we recognize all of our all-stars, the people in LACERA who have gone above and beyond the call of duty to help each other and our staff members and our members. And so if they're out there, virtually wave your hand. Tamara Caldwell, Erica Heru, Gerald Bacchio, and Jay Lee. And our ride share participant is Priscilla Hernandez. There was no web watcher this month. So once again, thank you very much for your service and everything that you do. We greatly appreciate you.
Thank you very much. We are now on to our CEO's report. Santos.
Thank you, Chair Bernstein, trustees. In addition to the report that is included in the packet, there's just a couple of items that I'd like to point out. First, I wanted to inform you that the Board of Supervisors did certify the LACERA election results. So I'd like to congratulate Trustee Gray for reappointment on the Board of Retirement, and also Trustee Santos for his reappointment on the Board of Investments. And so I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that. I'm going to be sending out the board letter that was approved to you all for your enjoyment and reading. The other issue is that I plan on coming back to the Board of Retirement in a closed session just to update you on our negotiations with our union partners. And so I wanted to make sure that you were aware that that we were going to be doing that. We've had some constructive meetings up to now, and we're moving forward on our negotiations. And I want to make sure that you're aware of where we're going. The last issue is I wanted to inform you that I've asked staff to begin making plans in consultation with board chairs of the Board of Investment, Board of Retirement, and the vice chairs in terms of figuring out the timing of opening the organization back up for public hearing meetings on site. And so we need to make some decisions about certain things and certain protocols. And so I want to make sure that the chairs and the vice chairs were involved in that. So we're just for planning purposes, we're targeting January as the time that we are going to consider reopening for public hearings. The board room is undergoing some renovations, not renovations, but some upgrades to the monitors and to the microphone systems. And so you'll see some changes when you do return to the room. So that's all I have at this particular point in time. I do want to make sure that Mr. Lugo spends a couple of minutes and talk a little bit about our ongoing negotiations with Fulgent on our testing protocols for COVID. Mr. Lugo?
Thank you, Santos. Good morning, Chair Bernstein. Good morning, trustees. We've been engaged with Fulgent over the last, I want to say, 3 to 4 weeks. JJ's actually been working directly with the Fulgent representative. We've made progress. Our statement of work has been sent over, and we're in basically working out the contract details. So those are still in process. I know we had hoped for a mid-November execution of the contract, but we're working diligently to make sure we have all of our needs, that they are responsive to all of our needs in terms of testing and more importantly, the vaccination validation to ensure it's a seamless and smoothest process for our staff. I'm going to pass it to JJ if there's any additional details with Fulgent.
I did get a communication yesterday that they've agreed to our statement of work. So we're just going to finalize that. And we're in the security review phase.
And the last comment I would make to that, to Santos's point, as we prepare board members to return back into the boardroom, we also have Fulgent acknowledging the fact that our board members would probably be engaged in that process, assuming those decisions are made prior to that. But we're planning for that engagement in terms of having Fulgent and trustees being able to have access to that solution.
That concludes the report.
Do I have any questions? Vivian, Trustee Gray, and then Trustee Santos.
Just very quickly, as an LA County employee, I've already complied with the requirements through Fulgent. As board members, will we also have the same requirement to upload our Vax card and all of that?
Well, that's something that we're going to discuss. I think there's a meeting that's scheduled between the chairs and vice chairs and the executive team to talk about those sort of logistics. And so we'll figure out what we need to do moving forward at that point. So it's a little premature to answer yes or no on that question. I just remembered that there was one other item, Chair Bernstein, if you'll indulge me.
Yes.
We are scheduling a special meeting of the Board of Retirement on November 17th to accommodate a request from our union partners to complete our evaluation or analysis on the hero pay bonuses, whether they're pensionable or not. That was negotiated with the Board of Supervisors and the unions. And so it's going to be conducted just prior to the Board of Investments meeting. It should be a very, very quick meeting. I know that Fern and Steve Rice are working on the analysis now. And so we're trying to get it completed and meet the time frame that our union partners have requested. of us. And so.
Santos,
wanted to make sure-
what-
Yeah,
What are those pensionable areas? I didn't hear you.
The
Uh,
board- the Board of Supervisors approved a series of bonuses for hero pay bonus and also, I believe they call it COVID
Appreciation.
appreciation bonus. And so our team on our side need to evaluate whether or not those bonuses are pensionable, and we're doing that analysis now. We also have to approve the pay codes that were identified by the Board of Supervisors as well. And so that's the analysis.
okay.
And it'll be a very, very quick meeting, and I appreciate Mr. Grable and Mr. Knox for allowing us to slip in there for a few minutes. So we take care of this for our active members, which is very important for our active members to move forward on.
Quick question, Mr. Chair, if I can.
Yes,
Just
please.
related to that point, Santos, there was two bonuses that I'm aware of, the $1,000 and then the 500. The $1,000 to all non-MAP employees in the county. The $500 is done through an attestation, a form that county employees fill out saying, yes, I was at a heightened level of risk due to COVID with my job duties, and I qualify for this 500. So they attest to that and submit the form to get this secondary bonus, which is the 500. That's the county scheme. Are you doing the same thing with LACERA employees, non-MAP and LACERA employees?
That's part of our negotiations. So we have not negotiated or gotten through the whether or not a bonus is going to be granted to LACERA employees.
Okay. I was wanting, I guess I was looking for clarity when you said, union partners, whether that meant the county union on behalf of county employees on our side versus LACERA's union and LACERA's employees.
Right. It's the county unions, not LACERA bargaining units. That's still, like I said, we'll brief you on where we are in December in terms of those items. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Santos?
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank the chairs, both Mr. Bernstein and Mr. Knox, for working together to get the Heroes Pay matter on the agenda for the Board of Retirement. This is a tremendous good news for our employees, my coworkers. Everybody's looking forward to getting this bonus right before the holidays. So this is tremendous. Thank you for everybody who was involved in getting that done. So my second point is actually a question to either Mr. Kryman or Mr. Lugo. It's with regards to returning back to in-person meetings in January. So my question is, I know the city of Pasadena and LA County has requirements that people need to, among other things, the distance, the 6 feet distance, and wearing a mask. And my question is more for the mask. Are we, or is management thinking in terms of returning back to in-person meetings, whether or not we're going to be in a situation that we have to wear a mask? That's number one. And number two, even though many of us, especially those of us who are county employees, like in the public defender's office, we are like, I believe it's like 97% vaccinated. But in addition to showing you vaccination documentation or providing the documentation, I guess, Folger or whoever, are we going to be requiring to have, in preparation for those meetings, like, for example, this meeting today, I humbly recommend that we all agree at some point that we should, in order to be at the meeting in January or February, whenever we decide to do that, they'll be really required to show a negative PCR test in preparation for the meeting. I believe that's 48, 78 hours, 72 hours requirement. Personally, I think it's a good idea. The different conferences that I attended where they require both proof of vaccination and proof, particularly at the American Institute, and proof of a negative test. That certainly gave me a lot of peace of mind to be able to be in a room, especially those rooms that have very little ventilation, like a board room. That certainly will give me a peace of mind, knowing that not only we all vaccinated, but two, we all tested negative. I'm really concerned with breakthrough infections. I think I reported before that my daughter was infected even though she was vaccinated. And by the way, everything is fine. The baby was born, everything is good, thank God. But I'm really concerned with the breakthroughs. And the last thing we want to do, either for one of us to infect the staff or vice versa. Do we have the bathroom situations, that when we take a break, it's a limited break, 15 minutes or thereabouts, and many of us run to the bathroom. So anyway, that's my question. I know it's a long question, but to me personally, it's really important for me to be able to perform my duties in person when that comes.
Yeah, well, we will definitely take your suggestions into consideration. Like I said, we really have to have a conversation with the chair and the vice chairs about what those protocols are going to be. I can tell you is that we are going to follow the safety protocols that are required of us through the public health, so social distancing, masking. If you're in the room, will be guided by what the public health officers of Pasadena as well as the County of Los Angeles are requiring. The testing, that's something that we have to discuss with the chairs and vice chairs, but we'll consider all angles, and then we'll make a recommendation from there. Okay, thank you.
Do I have any other comments or questions? Santos?
I'd like to make a quick comment, Alan.
Yes, of course, Mr. Oakham.
Yeah, I think the county health says it's either or. I mean, if you go to an outdoor with 10,000 or more, you've got to show or you go to a restaurant, you have to show that you've been vaccinated, or you have to show that you have a negative test in 72 hours. I think it would be too cumbersome for everybody every time they came to LACERA to have to, even though they've been vaccinated, and had the third dose, to have to go get a test. That's very cumbersome, and I would not agree with that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who wants to say something? All right, then I think we're going to move on. Thank you again, Santos. We're on to item 5, disability retirement applications on consent calendar. So here we go. Excuse me just a moment, I'm trying to reorganize my paperwork here. We start with safety SED applications for law enforcement, sheriffs, DAs, and investigators. Applications numbered 551D through 562D. I'd be happy to take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Oakham and second was that Kehoe?
Yes.
Bonnie, roll call, please.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Mr. Oakham?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Chair Bernstein?
Aye.
The motion passes by all trustees present.
Great. We are now on to safety SCD applications for fire and lifeguards, applications numbered 1408B through 1416B.
Motion prior.
Second.
Moved by Pryor, seconded by Oakham. Bonnie, roll call, please.
Mr. Pryor,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray. Okay, got it. Got the hand wave. Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
aye,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
I think there was technically 7 ayes and 1 thumbs up. I enjoyed that voting style. We are now on to general member SCD consent, application numbers 2291C through 2304C.
Keith, I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Knox, seconded by Oakham. Roll call, please.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
aye,
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Thank you. And then finally, on consent, we have 1 general member NSCD, application 4408.
Keith, I'll move.
I'll second,
Again, moved by Knox and seconded by Oakham.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
aye,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Stepanta has joined the meeting. Ms. Stepanta,
Oh, I'm not going to vote. I joined in. I was having connection issues. Sorry.
and Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
So I have 8 yeses and 1 abstention.
Very good. That passes. We are done with disabilities on consent. We'll get on to the non-consent and the appeals later. We're now on to item 6, consent items. I have not had any requests to pull any of these 8 items. So I would be happy to entertain a motion to
I'll move them.
Second.
Move by Robbins and seconded, I believe, by Kehoe. Roll call, please.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
aye,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Stepanta,
Aye.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We have nothing excluded from consent, so we're on to item 8, non-consent items. The first is a recommendation submitted by Mr. Pryor, formerly chair of the ad hoc and then of the official Board of Retirement Roles and Responsibilities Committee, that the board review and consider the proposed revised JOG-C charter. There's a memo dated October 21st, and I will turn it over to you, Will, to start this, or to turn it over to staff, whatever. Fiduciary counsel, take it away.
I'll just give it a real brief overview. As most of the members of the board know, we've had a process to review the JOG-C charter and to review the processes to ensure that there is no infringement on what really are the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Retirement. And in several cases, we did find that there was some brush up language that probably needed to be applied. And we assembled the committee, brought in Mr. Klausner, I think had some very good discussions with some very seasoned trustees regarding the roles and responsibilities. And Mr. Klausner did an excellent job of corralling all those independent thinkers together and coming up with a good product. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Klausner to talk about his his letter and the recommendations contained within it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Chairman, trustees, committee chairman Pryor. To summarize the discussion, I mean, you have a detailed memorandum. We identified the statutory duties of the board, specifically all 23 or 4 of them are outlined in the memorandum. It was the general consensus of the committee that the JOG-C had in essence turned into a third board, and that it was a board which in essence was there to manage the Board of Retirement, the Board of Investment, rather than to facilitate those areas where the two boards are required by statute to cooperate with each other. And so the revisions to the JOGC charter, which are recommended to you, essentially say, this is good for budget, because that's what you have to agree on. It's good for job classifications, because that's part of budget, and it's also something you agree on. It's good for initiating the search process for your senior folks, like your two senior officers, which would be a chief legal officer and a CEO. And you need it's good for policies, because the policies that you adopt essentially apply universally. And lastly, it left a miscellaneous category, because there may be times when there is employment litigation involving a senior staff member whose work impacts both boards significantly. And those are the types of times that you want to cooperate. Those places that were not those required areas in the one recommended area are what were eliminated from, or at least recommended for elimination from, the current charter. And so the charter, it also was a recommendation that you don't need a set meeting once a quarter. You ought to convene it when you need it. And I had one observation of my own, which became apparent during the process of working with first the ad hoc committee and then the board committee, is that you have a lot of policies, procedures, rules, protocols, and there's no one place where you can find them all. They're spread throughout our website. There are also some things that aren't on the website, but that are operational decisions that you've made over time. And I recommended that staff be tasked with, and that could be me that's tasked with it, with assembling an index of all of those things and where to find them. I don't want to create another book, but I think knowing where, first of all, knowing what they all are, and then identifying where to find them would be most useful as you continue with any policy development that you have. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a comment from Mr. Kehoe, and then anyone who has questions or comments, please feel free to shoot me a note or throw in a chat, and I will add you to the queue.
Thank you. So I appreciate the work and effort from everybody on the ad hoc and the ultimate committee that was formed. I'm in agreement with most of the items on here. Just have some recommended revisions when it comes to the calendar aspect. I do have concerns about the process that's being suggested, which is to adopt the revisions and then send it to the BOI for review and approval. As the JOGC chair, I think that the appropriate thing to do and the thing to have it be most likely be successful is to give it to the JOGC with these comments, ask the JOGC to review and to provide feedback back to both boards. That's the purpose of the JOGC. This is a joint policy. It actually ironically falls within its own charter that is listed here, that would be something that the JOGC would be responsible for. So I think the best thing to do would be to submit all of this material to the JOGC, have the JOGC review it, and then provide a final version for adoption to both boards. We'll have it 100%. As the chair of the JOGC currently, I would guarantee that it would be 100% transparent. So if there were any revisions adopted by the JOGC, that would be clear. And the goal, of course, would be that whatever ultimately comes out of the JOGC would go to both boards and hopefully be adopted by both boards. So it'd be consistent with all the other committees that does their own charter changes. You know, this is a little unique where we're at right now. I think it's been great work. Like I said, I'm in agreement with 99.9% of the items on here. So I think that's the best way to go. And my motion would be exactly that. So my motion is going to be to provide this and all the associated material to the JOGC for review and approval, or not approval, but review and comments to both boards for approval.
Just a comment from my side, I think that's appropriate that the,
Mr. Pryor, can I interrupt you for a moment?
yes, sir.
Just to be technical, I'd like a second on that motion so I can either rule the motion in or out.
I'll actually second the motion, sir.
Then thank you, and please go ahead.
Thank you. With the chair's permission, just to comment on that. I agree that the committee, and I think it's practical and it's appropriate and it's the right thing to do to have the committee that actually executes their own policy be provided the chance to make comment on that policy. And I think that's a very good point. And let's go ahead and submit it to JOGC. I think it'll be an interesting meeting. I'd like to be on the call and be able to discuss, so invite me, please. And let's talk about those revisions, and let's talk about how things are going to go if this policy is adopted. So thank you for that, and I totally agree with the motion.
And Mr. Park, could we also include item 2 as written, which is the direct staff to create that master index?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'll just say it from a staff perspective.
If that's part of the motion,
yeah. So it would be to, as we discussed, to give it to JOGC, and then item 2 would be to direct staff to create that master file index of existing BOR and BOI policies. And then just on the sidebar, ask staff to work on agendizing a December JOGC meeting, and definitely have Mr. Pryor there as well, and Mr. Klausner as well, so that we can discuss it at the JOGC.
Great. I have Mr. Klausner in queue, and then Ms. Gray.
Yeah, that was my only comment, was I would like to be present at that JOGC meeting, since I've been charged with Scrivener duties. And I can also, since I was at all the various committee meetings, I can provide any background that anybody needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
I was only going to mention that we have a JOGC meeting tomorrow. I think Mr. Kehoe covered it by asking staff to schedule a JOGC in December, preferably early December. The only thing is tomorrow's meeting, do we still continue with tomorrow's meeting? Or do we postpone the meeting until later so that we can cover both the budgeting process and the charter for JOGC?
Mr. Rice, you popped up. Do you want to say something?
Yes, the current charter remains in effect until changed by both boards. So there's no reason not to proceed with the meeting tomorrow. And I think it's important to the executive office budget process as well to have that meeting go forward.
And that would be my preference as well.
Okay, yeah, it would be hard to derail the meeting anyway. So let's all be there with our coffee, 9 o'clock tomorrow. I have no one else in the queue. And I do have a note from Bonnie, and then Mr. Santos-Acon, you have a note that there is a JOGC meeting scheduled already for Wednesday, December 15th. So Mr. Kehoe, as chair, I'll leave that up to you, whether we do that meeting or try to reschedule, but that is the one that's on our schedule currently, according to Bonnie. Mr. Santos.
Well, my question is probably to Mr. Rice. So since we have the JOGC committee meeting tomorrow, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the staff is ready, Mr. Klausner is ready. Is it inappropriate under the Brown Act to place this matter on the agenda tomorrow? Because if yes, then I will make a substitute motion that the matter be brought to tomorrow. If not, I just leave it alone. I'm in support of the motion, by the way. So it's just more, can we get this done tomorrow? If not, happy to do it in December, whenever the schedule is.
No, we could not under the Brown Act have it considered tomorrow. There has to be 72 hours notice under the Brown Act of agenda items, and this isn't on the agenda, so it'll have to be addressed at a later meeting.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you very much. I support.
Okay. Bonnie, roll call, please.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta,
Yes.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. Before we move on, I just want to take a moment to thank Mr. Pryor for chairing the Committee on Board Roles and Responsibilities. I want to thank Mr. Oakham and Mr. Harris and Mr. Santos for serving on the ad hoc committee, and then the committee. At some point fairly soon, I imagine we'll be disbanding the committee. It's always nice to see a little bit of bureaucracy get to unravel because it's served its purpose. But you guys have done great work, and I really appreciate this effort to clarify things. I think it's going to establish some of the authorities of the Board of Retirement more clearly, make some of the interactions between the two boards easier and more collegial. Really great work. I really appreciate that. So thank you very much. I now will go on to non-consent item 8B, a recommendation submitted by Mr. Liu, our Legislative Affairs Officer, that the board approve the board officer rotation policy. Mr. Liu, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bernstein and board trustees. So this work product has been, the summation of a couple of meetings we've had starting in September, where the board considered different options besides doing an election to select board officers. And then last month in October, we kind of dove into more specific terms to be put into a policy. So that's why I'm bringing this policy to the board for approval. Basically, it encapsulates the terms that we had talked about last month about counting a 1-year gap for appointed trustees, not having a minimum service requirement, and having people be able to opt out indefinitely with no loss of seniority. In drafting this policy, I also included a number of contingencies that sort of came up in the drafting of it, and just based on the spirit of the board sentiment, these include how we deal with tiebreakers, basically let the trustee who has served fewer times be higher on the list. And then as far as, because we're creating a 1-year gap for appointed trustees, we wouldn't be counting, that additional time that they remain on the board because a successor trustee has not been appointed yet. And also, if they are remaining on the board after their term has expired, they also wouldn't be eligible to serve as an officer. And then lastly, if there's a vacancy that occurs, trustees with seniority can serve out the vacancy, but not have their seniority reset to 0. So that way they'll still be eligible to serve the following year if eligible. So that's sort of a summation of what went into this policy, and happy to take any questions or comments on it.
Mr. Kehoe, I've got Mr. Kehoe in the queue.
Thank you. I really appreciate the work on this, and I think staff, I think you did an awesome job at making something very, making this very condensed and simple to read and understand. I just have one recommended clarification on it on page 2 under the board officer selection, first paragraph. The end of the paragraph, it says a trustee may serve in only one board officer position during any year. I would just like to add that we say a trustee may only serve in only one board officer position for their respective board during any year. That clears up any confusion. BOI shouldn't affect BOR, BOR shouldn't affect BOI, each are independent boards. I just want to avoid any issues there. So it would say a trustee may serve in only one board officer position for their respective board during any year. That would be my recommended revision to the policy. And I guess I'll kick it off with a, I'll motion to move this policy with that amendment.
I will second that.
Okay. Vivian?
I just have a real quick question. So does that mean that a trustee could be an officer on both boards?
Yeah.
So if somebody on the BOR is, say, vice chair, they can also serve as secretary on the BOI.
Okay.
But they couldn't serve as both, chair and vice chair on the BOR individually. They'd have to, you can only serve in one capacity for their respective board.
So conceivably, somebody could be chair of the BOR and BOI at the same time.
Technically, yes. Statistically, I think that would be pretty tough.
Suicide.
And I don't know who on earth would possibly want that.
Mr.
And I
Bernstein?
think that we've covered it by not penalizing people for not taking a job. I would note that in addition to chairing the BOR, I have been an exceptionally good secretary for Mr. Knox on the BOI this year. And I think that's been fine. I think that we've covered it by making it easy for people to delay a year for reasons of their own choosing. Mr. Liu, would you I've got more people in the queue, but would you clarify one thing? Again, under the board officer selection, there's reference to seniority resetting to 0. It doesn't seem clear to me. As I understood it, you'd lose all your time accrued up until December 31st of the prior year, and then everyone would start accruing new time on January 1st. But I read this as possibly being from the date of the election, which is not going to be on January 1st. And I do think that needs to be clarified. So it's a minor point, but I just wanted to ask how the policy would work as drafted.
Yeah, so the intention was it would reset to 0 as of the beginning of the year from the date of your board officer service. So if there's some ambiguity about that as far as being reset when you got elected as opposed to when you start serving, I can make that clarification.
I just think to avoid future confusion, that would be a good thing to clarify a little bit. I don't know if the motion needs to be revised. I just think that that's the intention and the language could be a little bit more clear.
Yes, definitely make that clear that it, once you start serving, that's when it resets as opposed to when you got elected.
Thank you. I have Mr. Knox and then Mr. Pryor.
Thank you. And again, appreciate all of your efforts on this, Barry. I guess back to Mr. Kehoe's point, even though it's statistically, probably unlikely that somebody would be chair of both. I don't know that it's a fiduciary issue necessarily if someone was chair of both, but would we want to consider putting something in there that just says, thou shalt not be chair of one and the other?
I think that choice would be up to the board.
Yeah, and I guess I was just throwing it out there to see if anybody else. I don't feel super strongly about it, but even though it's unlikely, would we want to just do it just for the, the clarity now? If it came up later on, would it look odd if somebody did decide to be both, even though it's a lot of work and we all get that and it's unlikely?
My only concern, I'm supportive of the idea, but I would note that the current policy permits it. And this is an expansion beyond what we were talking about. And we've worked very well in conjunction with BOI. I'm not sure this is the moment to address it. We're not creating an opportunity here. The opportunity already exists. So I'm not,
fair point.
Just from a procedural point of view, I'm not sure this is the moment to clean it up.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I'll just save it for when it happens and say, I told you so.
Mr. Pryor, and then Mr. Pryor, Mr. Harris, and then Mr. Santos.
Actually, I was going to bring up the same, not necessarily a concern, but the same issue that Mr. Knox did, and that is the possibility of somebody being chair at the same time for both boards. While I don't see it as, the boards are separated, so I don't see there being a problem. I could just see it being really overwhelming for one person to try and do that. But at the same time, that should be up to the person, not for the boards to limit. So I appreciate Mr. Knox bringing that up. Thank you.
Mr. Harris?
Well, I was just going to say, I do agree with Mr. Knox, and I don't go with statistical improbabilities, because as soon as you rely on something like that, the improbable will happen. So I absolutely think that even though now that is possible, I think we do need to clean that up. we're all very collegial in this group right now, but we could have some megalomaniac get elected onto our board, and all of a sudden they're, in a position to be chair of both, and who knows what would happen. So I just think it's best to, at the appropriate time, to clean that up. I think it's good to spread the wealth. I mean, I agree, you'd have to be crazy to want to be on both of them at the same time, but stranger things have been known to happen.
Mr. Santos.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the comments that have been made. It's just a matter of throwing a line in the policy, because you just never know. And what Mr. Harris said is certainly true. We have seen it. That's also been around in LACERA on the board for the 18 years or so. We have seen individuals that have their own agendas. And so it's best to just throw a line in there that one individual cannot serve as a chair on both boards. Perhaps, as an example, Vivian could be the chair of the Board of Retirement and be a secretary in the BOI if she was on both, as an example. So, but to have the chair of the BOR and the chair of the BOI, that will be problematic to me, even though statistically may not be feasible, but it's just, again, you just never know. So I'm in support of the comments made.
May I make a suggestion, and then I'll call Mr. Moore, who I see with his hand up. In part because I'm a little bit confused about where we are currently in terms of current JOGC authorities and assigning. I'm hearing a request. I think the item is in order. I think it relates. I'm not ruling it out of order, but why don't we refer it back to staff to agendize for a separate discussion, and they can determine whether it's come to the BOR directly or whether it's currently a JOGC. But it seems to me like there's a lot of interest in discussing it, and also a fair amount of sentiment in both directions, both for addressing it and for keeping it separate from this specific conversation. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I don't think it's a very complex issue. You either want to allow one person to be the chair of both boards or you don't. And, it's kind of easy for us to sit back and say, that's something that no one would want to do that. But if the opportunity presented itself to someone may want to do that. And I don't know if I would be comfortable with the two boards being somewhat melded when they're supposed to be separate. So I think it's a legitimate question. And I would move that we add that line that Mr. Santos just stated, that no member can be chair of both boards at the same time.
So I'll ask Mr. Rice.
Second that, Chair, before we.
Yeah, Mr. Knox, second. Here's my concern, and then I'll throw it to Mr. Rice. I think the way to say it is that the chair of the BOR cannot be the chair of the BOI. I don't think we have the authority to tell the BOI what they're doing. I think we do have the authority to say that as the BOR, that you cannot be chair of BOR in a year while you're being chair of the BOI.
No. Well, okay.
Okay. Mr. Rice?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bernstein. That was going to be my point. And there are also some logistical problems here. I think it really is a joint board issues. Both boards would have to agree to this because the Board of Retirement is a separate legislative body from the Board of Investments, and each board has a right to select their own officers. And a logistical problem would be the BOR typically has its elections beforehand. So before the BOI in January, or their selection under the new policy, and so there are some complexities there in terms of implementation. So, out of respect for the fact that this is really a joint issue, in that the Board of Retirement by this motion would be purporting to limit what the Board of Investments can do by way of its officers, I think it's a joint board issue and be treated as such.
Procedurally, where are we right now? Mr. Rice, is it?
Well, we have a motion, but I would say that I'm concerned about the effect of the motion in limiting the ability of the separate legislative bodies to select its officers. So I don't think it can be implemented.
Yeah, I think you come in, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to delay. This is a simple issue, so I will be willing to support the motion without the amendment. Those of us who are in the Board of Investments will discuss it tomorrow, or whenever the Board of Investments is. And the hope is, let's get this policy enacted, and then perhaps it needs to be adjusted at a later day. I don't want to delay it. I think it's a tremendous idea, and I would like to see that this policy implemented in the upcoming January leadership election.
All right, Mr. Moore, your hand is still up. Did you have a comment?
I was also in the queue as well, Alan.
Okay, so Mr. Moore, Mr. Keough, Mr. Pryor.
Okay, so I could withdraw the motion and then we can move on.
Thank you. Mr. Keough?
Yeah, I'm good with moving on. I
Yeah.
agree with what Mr. Santos said.
Okay, Mr. Pryor?
I'm good with moving on. My only point was that I don't think we would be limiting the Board of Investments decision-making if we were saying we did not want to have a chair that was on the Board of Investments at that time. We would be making our own decision at that point. That's something that we can decide. Thank you.
I see no one else in the queue.
Chair Bernstein?
Mr. Rice?
Just for clarity, once a motion is made and seconded, it belongs to the body. So the motion by Trustee Moore, I think we can handle it by saying it's withdrawn without objection.
So Mr. Moore's substitute motion has been withdrawn without objection, and the motion to clarify being considered is a motion that was made by Mr. Kehoe. I'm so sorry, Bonnie, I forget who seconded it.
Mr. Santos.
Mr. Santos, thank you. And if there's a need to clarify that, let me know. And if not, I think we're ready to vote.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Mr. Oakham? I'll come back to you, Mr. Oakham. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta?
Yes.
Mr. Oakham? Chair Bernstein?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Liu, thank you again for all your work. Mr. Knox, thank you for spearheading this. I'm excited to see how it progresses. We are now on to non-consent 8C, a recommendation again submitted by Mr. Liu that the board direct its voting delegate to vote yes on sponsorship by SACRS of an omnibus bill for the SACRS 2022 legislative platform. Mr. Robbins, did you speak? Okay, Mr. Liu?
Yes, I was just about to say it's basically a technical and cleanup bill from SACRS, and there are a number of proposals here, so I won't go through all of them, but would be happy to take any questions if anybody has anything.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Bernstein, seconded by Robbins. Roll call, please.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Mr. Oakham? Mr. Moore?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, Bonnie.
Thank you, Mr. Oakham and Mr. Moore. Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta?
Yes.
Chair Bernstein?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. And thank you again for your work on that, Barry. We are now on to item 9, reports. I have 4 reports that are all listed as FYI. Are there any questions or need to discuss before we move on? We are now on to item 10, items for staff review.
I don't have anything to report.
I think that there is a request to agendize a discussion regarding joint service as chair of both boards.
Okay, so we will do that for a joint meeting.
No, I think it's a BOR. I think it is a BOR discussion. I think Mr. Pryor is correct that we can talk about it at the BOR and see where we want to go, but I'll leave that to staff to figure out.
Okay, great. I will note that.
We are now on to good of the order.
Okay, Mr. Pryor,
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Knox,
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Santos.
Nothing, I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. So the item for staff review is regarding the November 17th Board of Retirement meeting?
No, it's regarding the conversation that came up during the discussion about leadership service, about whether we the current policy would permit somebody to chair both boards and whether we wanted to talk about that further.
Got you. What about the fact that we need to have a Board of Retirement meeting on November 17th?
I think that's already taken care of. But Mr. Kryman?
It's been taken care of. We're going to schedule the special meeting on the 17th of November.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
And gang, I'm expecting you all to show up and prove to Mr. Knox how quickly we run BOR meetings.
So I'm sorry, I missed that. So what are we doing November 17th?
So November 17th, there's going to be a special Board of Retirement meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning prior to the BOI meeting. It is to address the heroes pay and COVID appreciation bonus pays that the Board of Supervisors approved in October. And so it'll be a very quick meeting, hopefully. We're preparing the reports now, and then we'll go ahead and file it and schedule it for the 17th.
And I believe the plan is to have it be at 9 o'clock so we can open it. And obviously it'll take whatever time it takes, but it should be, as Mr. Carmen said, a quick meeting.
Yes.
Bonnie?
Mr. Oakham.
Yes. Let me get me on here. I'm sorry. Okay. Bonnie, I had to take some pills. Where'd I go?
Okay, great.
But I had to take some pills. Could you repeat the motion?
Yes, this is good of the order. Do you have any comments?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Moore?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Kehoe?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Robbins?
Aloha.
That other sock.
Mr. Harris?
You know what? You should wear.
I'm good. Thank you.
Ms. Sabanta?
Nothing, thank you. Good morning.
Ms. Gray?
Very quickly, I just want to again acknowledge staff and Mr. Klausner for the work that you've done on both both of the issues that we covered. And Barry Lou, you did a whole lot in addition to everything else that you do. I appreciate that tremendously. So thank you. Thank you to staff for all of the work that you do. And have a great day.
Thank you. DG Popovich?
Yes. One thing I just wanted to mention earlier, there was a discussion about creating an index for all board policies. That actually does exist on LACERA.com under the governance document. So for example, if you go to Board of Retirement and under About LACERA, you'll see a link to other board governance documents and policies. And this is where all of those policies live along with the charters. So I just wanted to share that. The same exists for the Board of Investments. It takes you on the same page if you scroll down.
Lori Guglielmo?
Nothing, thank you.
Louis Lugo?
Nothing, thank you.
Chief Counsel Stephen Rice?
Nothing, thank you.
Santos Kryman?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Chair Bernstein?
Thank you. I want to just again congratulate Ms. Gray on her reelection to the Board of Retirement, as well as our colleague, Mr. Santos, on his reelection to the Board of Investment. I want to say how much I'm looking forward to Sackers next week in Hollywood. And I believe a good number of people are signed up. I'm pretty sure if you're not signed up, they still might take you if you want to check it out. I know our vice chair, Ms. Gray, who's the current president, has been working very hard, and I trust it's going to be a really great educational week, or roughly week. So I'm looking forward to that very much. And I also want to just thank everyone who put so much work in, staff, as Ms. Gray said, but also especially Mr. Pryor and his committee for basically spending the entire year on this roles and responsibility project. It was a lot of extra work, and I think it turned out well. So that is all I have. And is there sentiment to take like a 5-minute break before we go into disability cases, or would people? Okay, I'm seeing heads. So let's take a 5-minute break and then come back and do disability retirement cases to be held in closed session.